The scent of lavender and oak drifted through the vineyard air as the golden sun began its slow descent over Napa Valley. Guests arrived at the Vintner's Bloom Pavilion in tailored suits and flowing dresses, sipping chilled wine while waiting for the ceremony of the year to begin. I, Lena Hartley, stood in the bridal suite soft candlelight, staring at my reflection in the floor-length mirror, heart pounding beneath layers of ivory silk. It had taken 6 months of fittings, 2 seamstresses, and every spare dollar I had to create the perfect dress. But none of that compared to what was about to happen. In 30 minutes, I would become Lena Moreau. At least, that was the plan, before everything went up in smoke. The door creaked open behind me. I expected Riley, my maid of honor, but instead came the clicking of expensive heels and the scent of white gardenia. Celeste Moreau, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, stood in the doorway dressed in midnight blue satin, her lips painted with a confident smile that didn't reach her eyes. I stiffened. Celeste and I had always had a cold war of sorts, thinly veiled under polite brunches and hollow compliments. Ethan, her son, my fiancé, believed she just needed time. But what she did next shattered that illusion forever. I just needed a private word, Celeste said smoothly, stepping inside and closing the door behind her. Before you go and make the biggest mistake of your life. I turned slowly. Excuse me. She looked me up and down. You look presentable. But let's not pretend this is anything more than a social experiment. Ethan will realize that marrying you is a detour, not a destination. I narrowed my eyes. He loves me. Celeste smiled like I had confirmed a theory. He thinks he does. But you don't belong in this world, Lena. You're charming in that underdog, small town, bootstrap kind of way. But Moreau's build legacies. You sell mid-tier wine labels and write wedding copy for boutique ads. My fingers clenched at my sides. I've worked hard for everything I have. Celeste tilted her head, eyes gleaming. So have we. That's why I won't let this farce continue. Then, in one swift, horrifying movement, she reached into her designer clutch and pulled out a gold-plated lighter. What are you doing? I asked, voice rising. She walked toward the hem of my dress, flicked the lighter on, and whispered, saving my son. Before I could move, a small flame kissed the edge of the fabric. It caught instantly. Flames danced upward, devouring silk and lace like paper. Riley screamed from the hallway as she rushed in with Jules and Sophie. Celeste stepped back, triumphant, the lighter still lit in her hand. My dress, my dream, was turning into blackened ribbons before my eyes. You're insane, Sophie breathed. Security will deal with this, Jules said, pulling out her phone. But I already had mine out. I wasn't calling for help. I was turning the camera toward Celeste. You do know the live stream has been on for the last 20 minutes, right? I said, voice shaking. Celeste's smugness faltered. It was for Ethan's uncle in Scotland, I continued, but I made sure it captured the room just in case something went wrong. Guess what, Celeste? Something did. Her face blanched. You set me up. You set fire to my wedding dress, I snapped. The truth set you up. Outside, the screen above the altar had begun broadcasting the chaos in real time. Guests gasped. Ethan's best man sprinted toward the venue. Celeste's face twisted as Riley opened the suite window, coughing through the smoke. Then my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. He was coming. And that's when Celeste finally realized she'd gone too far. The smoke hung low in the bridal suite, like a ghost refusing to leave. Ashes settled on the hardwood floor where the hem of my gown had once shimmered in the sunlight. My hands trembled as I clutched my phone, the live stream still active. I could hear gasps from the outdoor ceremony space, the shocked murmurs of nearly 100 guests realizing what they had just witnessed. Somewhere out there, Ethan was watching too. The door burst open with a bang. Lena. Ethan's voice cracked as he appeared in the doorway, his tuxedo jacket flapping behind him. His eyes swept from the scorched dress to the still-burning lighter in Celeste's hand. For a moment, the room froze, time itself pausing at the collision of truth and consequence. Ethan, sweetheart, Celeste began, stepping forward. This isn't what it looks like. I was simply testing the fabric. I had no idea it would catch fire so easily. Wedding dresses should be made of something more durable, don't you think? He didn't move. His voice dropped low, steady, almost too calm. Tell me I didn't just watch you burn Lena's wedding dress while calling her unworthy. Her face crumpled, then reshaped itself into defiance. She isn't right for you, Ethan. She doesn't come from our world. This is for your future. My future is standing right here, Ethan snapped, pointing at me. And you just tried to torch it. Riley stepped in front of me protectively, her face pale but determined. Sophie and Jules flanked me on either side, as if forming a barrier between us and whatever came next. Celeste's eyes darted between us, a flicker of uncertainty finally breaking through her composure. You're blinded by love, she said, reaching toward Ethan. One day, you'll thank me for protecting you. No, I won't, he said, stepping back. And you don't get to decide who I love. Vincent Moreau appeared behind Ethan, calm but cold as winter wind. I've been quiet long enough, he said, voice like stone. You've crossed every boundary this family ever tried to honor. Arson, Celeste? At a wedding? Her eyes widened. Vincent, don't be dramatic. I was trying to. You were trying to control him, he cut in. Like you've tried to control this entire family for 27 years. My breath caught. Everyone was hearing this. Everyone. Ethan, Vincent said, turning to his son. Whatever you need, I'll support you. Including a new dress, a new ceremony, or walking away entirely if that's what Lena wants. I want this wedding to happen, I said, finding my voice. But not like this. Riley leaned in and whispered, Lena, what are we going to do? I closed my eyes for a second. The silk was gone. The flowers were smoke-scorched. But the love? Still here. Still burning, but in a different way. We pivot, I said. We don't stop. We change the story. I turned to Jules. Remember the vineyard shoot we did for Nadia Tran's boutique last month? The lace sheath dress. Her eyes lit up. Yes, it's still on site. She said she stored some samples for the winter showcase. Call her. Now, I said. I'm going to wear it. Vincent already had his phone out. I'll have someone bring it here in 15 minutes. Celeste looked around wildly. You're seriously letting this go on? After what I did? No, Ethan said quietly. We're not letting it go. We're rising from it. He turned to the camera, still streaming. To our guests, thank you for your patience. The wedding will continue, because love doesn't end when something burns. It begins when we choose to rebuild. Applause erupted through the speakers, distant but fierce. Celeste took a step toward Ethan, her voice breaking. You're choosing her over me? I'm choosing what's right, he said. And right now, that's Lena. Security will escort Mrs. Moreau off the premises, Vincent said calmly, nodding to the venue manager. This is not her day, and she has lost the right to act like it is. As Celeste was led from the room, her pride trailing behind her like torn lace, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Sophie handed me a glass of water. You sure about this? You still want to stand in front of everyone after all that? I nodded. More than ever. Because this isn't just about love anymore. It's about telling the truth, even if it burns. 10 minutes later, we were sewing dignity back together with borrowed fabric, steady hands, and a kind of determination fire couldn't destroy. The ceremony wasn't canceled. It was transformed. The bridal suite became a whirlwind of movement and muffled voices. Nadia Tran's assistant arrived in record time, arms cradling garment bags like sacred scrolls. Riley unzipped the first one to reveal a gown so different from my original dress that it made me pause. Gone was the full princess skirt and embroidered train. In its place was a sleek, elegant sheath dress, ivory satin with a lace overlay that shimmered like morning frost in soft candlelight. It's perfect, Sophie whispered, her fingers brushing the fabric reverently. I stepped behind a divider as my bridesmaids moved like clockwork, helping me change with calm, practiced urgency. There was no time to mourn the loss of the first dress. No time to wonder what people might say. This was war paint in silk, and I would walk into battle with my head high. Riley adjusted the back and zipped it up with care. You look like you walked out of a legend. Not a legend, I said quietly. A storm. In the mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Stronger, sharper, stripped of expectation and drenched in truth. My hair still held its curls, my makeup only slightly smudged by smoke and stress. The veil, a soft cathedral-length piece from Nadia's winter collection, floated like mist over my shoulders. Vincent re-entered, pausing when he saw me. Lena, you're radiant. Thank you, I said. And thank you for everything you did back there. He gave a half smile. You did the hard part. I just made sure the door didn't close on you while you were walking through fire. Ethan, meanwhile, was outside calming the guests. The live stream remained active, the camera now fixed at the altar, capturing rows of waiting guests and the soft buzz of anticipation. Some people chatted quietly. Others checked their phones. A few wiped away tears. The tension had shifted from scandal to solidarity. Sophie peeked out the window. He's addressing everyone again. The room fell silent as we listened. I want to thank you all for staying. Ethan's voice echoed through the live stream speakers. This day hasn't gone the way we planned. But love isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. It's about choosing each other, even when chaos tries to pull us apart. So if you're willing to witness something honest, something real, stay with us. The ceremony will begin shortly. A surge of applause followed. I turned to the venue coordinator. Can we project the walk from here to the altar? I want everyone to see the whole journey, not just the pretty part. She nodded. We'll make it happen. We moved quickly, linking cameras and adjusting lighting along the garden path that led from the bridal suite to the ceremony space. The sun had dipped low, casting golden light through the grapevines and olive trees. It was soft, sacred. Outside the suite, Ethan waited just beyond the archway. He hadn't seen the new dress. His back was turned as if preserving the moment. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The cameras followed every step. The soft crunch of gravel beneath my shoes, the flutter of lace in the breeze, the way Riley and Sophie flanked me like sentinels of hope. Guests stood and turned. Their faces lit up. Phones dropped. Hands clutched hearts. As I neared the ceremony doors, the projection screen shifted. There I was, walking slowly, proudly, defiantly, from ruin into redemption. Ethan turned, and I saw the look in his eyes, pure wonder, tempered with pain, love, and something deeper. Gratitude, not just for the dress or the moment, but for the fire I had walked through to stand beside him. Ready, he asked, offering his hand. More than ever, I said, sliding my fingers into his. The music began. Not the original classical trio, but a single violinist playing a slow, stirring piece that felt both ancient and urgent. The kind of sound that stitched something broken back together. We walked together down the aisle. Guests rose, not in silence, but in thunderous applause. They clapped, not just for a couple in love, but for the storm we had weathered, for the message we had sent without ever intending to. That no fire, no sabotage disguised as love could erase what we had built. Vincent stood in the front row, tears in his eyes. The chair next to him, once reserved for Celeste, stood empty. The officiant, a gentlewoman named Pastor Gwen who had met us months ago, smiled as we reached the altar. Dearly beloved, she began, we are gathered here today not only to witness a wedding, but to witness the triumph of love over fear, truth over manipulation, and courage over control. Ethan squeezed my hand, and for the first time that day, I finally felt peace. The garden surrounding the altar felt like a different world now, untouched by the chaos that had scorched the bridal suite. The wind carried the scent of vineyard grapes and eucalyptus, as if nature itself had come to bless the moment. I stood beside Ethan, his fingers warm in mine, the tremble in my chest replaced by a grounded stillness. There were no more masks, no more pretenses, no more waiting for the next sabotage. We had faced the fire. We had walked through it. And now, in front of everyone who mattered, we stood whole. Pastor Gwen continued with a gentle authority. What you have witnessed today is not just a wedding delayed by circumstance. It is a testament to character, to loyalty, and to the kind of love that refuses to be extinguished. She paused to look at us both. Ethan and Lena have chosen to proceed with this ceremony not in spite of what happened, but because of it. Because they know that love is not found in perfection. It is found in choosing each other again and again, especially when everything goes wrong. Soft murmurs of agreement rolled through the guests. Ethan turned to face me, his expression open and unguarded. I didn't write new vows, he said quietly. But I need to say something that wasn't in the original plan. I nodded. He took a breath. Lena, I've loved you since the day you made fun of my wine tasting notes and told me my handwriting looked like a chicken dipped in ink. You've challenged me, humbled me, and taught me how to speak truth even when it's terrifying. And today you showed me what it means to fight for love when someone tries to burn it down. The guests listened with reverent silence. I promise to stand beside you, Ethan continued, through any fire, any storm, and especially when those storms come from people who should know better. I choose you not just today, but tomorrow and every day after, no matter who tries to tear us apart. And even if that person carries my last name. There were audible sniffles now from the audience. My heart swelled, so full it felt like it might lift me off the ground. I reached for the card I had written days earlier, slightly smudged from the ash still clinging to my hands. Ethan, I began, voice soft but steady. You are the calm in my chaos, the grounding wire that keeps me from floating too far. I never believed I'd be loved this fiercely, this completely, and now I know why. Because this love is fireproof. He laughed softly, his eyes glistening. I promise to hold your truth when you can't speak it, to be your mirror when the world tries to distort who you are, and to never let fear speak louder than our love. You are not your legacy or your family shadow. You are the man who stayed, and I will always fight for you. For us. A hush fell across the space. Pastor Gwen smiled through damp eyes. And now the rings. A flicker of concern passed across Ethan's face. The rings had been with his mother during the pre-ceremony preparations. For a brief second, I thought we might have lost them too. But then Vincent stepped forward from the front row, reaching into his coat pocket. I thought this might happen, he said, offering a small velvet box. I picked them up before the bridal suite became combustible. Laughter broke the tension like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Ethan took my hand, sliding the ring onto my finger. With this ring, I give you my heart, my trust, and my name, even if the world tries to take them from me. I slipped the band onto his finger. And with this ring, I give you my truth, my fight, and my forever. Pastor Gwen's voice rang clear. By the power vested in me and witnessed by 100 people and several thousand more on a live stream, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss your bride. He didn't hesitate. His kiss was steady, unhurried, and unapologetic. The applause that followed shook the pavilion. Guests stood clapping, cheering, some even whistling. It wasn't the polite joy of a typical wedding. It was fierce. It was earned. As we turned to walk back down the aisle, hand in hand, I saw Marcus Blaine, my boss from the agency, standing discreetly by the hedge with his camera phone raised. He gave me a quick thumbs up and mouthed the words, "You're going viral." I almost laughed. Sophie whispered from behind us, "Lena, you just changed the whole game." But all I felt in that moment was the strength of Ethan's hand around mine and the knowledge that I had walked through fire, not just to say I do, but to prove that I meant it. Every step down that aisle was a step away from the smoke and into something far more powerful. Light. The moment the doors of the ceremony space closed behind us, a different kind of energy swept through the guests. No longer bound by tradition or rigid silence, the celebration erupted in genuine applause and knowing smiles. People weren't just congratulating us on getting married. They were honoring a war won without swords. The music picked up with a more jubilant tempo, and the vineyard transformed from a tense battlefield into a sanctuary of victory. Inside the Grand Pavilion's ballroom, lanterns cast soft amber light across the hardwood floors. The long banquet tables had been decorated with cascading vines and ivory flowers. But now, among the place settings and wine glasses, small handwritten cards had appeared, notes from our guests. Riley had organized them while I was changing dresses. At the entrance stood a tall easel displaying a sign written in gold ink. Messages of resilience for Ethan and Lena. The frame below it was filling up with words like, "Courage is contagious, your love inspires, and some flames forged, not destroy." Marcus approached us with a glass of champagne in each hand. I just spoke with someone from the Napa Valley Journal. They want a quote for tomorrow's front page. I'm thinking, love that couldn't be torched. I laughed as Ethan took a glass. Sounds about right. Also, Marcus added, lowering his voice, the agency's phones are blowing up. 3 new clients want to work with us, specifically asking for the fireproof bride from the live stream. I guess we're a brand now, Ethan said with a smirk, clinking his glass gently against mine. We shared our first dance moments later. It wasn't the choreographed waltz we had rehearsed. The music had changed, the mood transformed. It was simpler, slower. Ethan whispering something ridiculous in my ear while I laughed against his shoulder. The song ended with a gentle spin and a kiss on the forehead. And just like that, the guests started flooding the dance floor. Vincent made his way through the crowd, shaking hands, offering smiles. His presence was commanding but relaxed, like a man who had shed years of quiet tolerance and found the will to finally lead. His sister, Vivian, joined us at the head table during dinner. Her voice was low but urgent. Richard, she said to Ethan's father, Celeste is still fuming. She's locked herself in the guest house and says you're choosing Lena over your own wife. Vincent took a long sip of wine before replying. No, Vivian. I'm choosing peace over decades of manipulation. And I'm choosing my son's happiness over appearances. Ethan squeezed my hand beneath the table, a silent gesture of gratitude. The food was exquisite, herb-crusted lamb, honey-roasted carrots, and golden beet salad, all plated beautifully, even if no one seemed particularly focused on the menu. Instead, people talked, and not about Celeste. They spoke about the power of truth, the importance of standing your ground, and the kind of bravery it takes to protect love when it's threatened by those who claim to know better. Colleagues from the agency raised a toast to me. To Lena, Marcus declared, whose fireproof spirit saved more than a dress. It reminded all of us what authenticity really means. Riley stood next, lifting her glass. To the woman who didn't let smoke blind her, and to the man who knew when to cut through the fog. Later that night, Jason's cousin Chloe approached me with hesitation. I want you to know, she said softly, not everyone in the family thinks like Aunt Celeste. Most of us have been waiting for someone to call her out. I nodded, touched. Thank you, Chloe. That means more than you know. Then she smiled. And just so you know the Phoenix motif? Genius. Your bridesmaids already turned it into a Snapchat filter. I blinked. A what? She held up her phone. A filter framed the screen with soft flames, a rising phoenix in gold, and the words "Can't Burn Love, Ethan and Lena." I shook my head, half laughing, half stunned. Of course they did. Hours passed like minutes. The dance floor stayed full. Glasses were never empty, and I could see the lines between social circles beginning to dissolve. People from my world, copywriters, graphic designers, small vineyard owners, were mingling with the polished guests who had once questioned my place here. Without Celeste's shadow looming over them, they looked freer, more human. As if truth had stripped them of their pretensions, too. As Ethan and I stood under the string lights at the edge of the garden, I watched him read a text from his father. He turned the phone toward me. Asterisk, she says I need to choose. Her or Lena. I told her the choice was easy, and I've already made it. Asterisk. Are you okay? I asked, reading his expression carefully. He nodded slowly. I'm better than okay. For the first time, I feel like we're building something honest. Something real. Without compromise. I leaned my head on his shoulder. The music drifted in from the ballroom, the laughter of our guests echoing like a new kind of legacy. One not built on bloodlines or business empires, but on boldness, truth, and a love that didn't ask for permission to exist. Under the stars, we held each other. And we didn't just celebrate a wedding. We celebrated the burning away of everything false. 3 days after the wedding, headlines spread across local and national media. What had started as a whispered scandal in Napa Valley became a full-blown story of resilience, courage, and the unexpected rise of a bride who refused to let the flames define her. Articles titled Phoenix Bride Defies Sabotage, Mother-in-law's Fire Sparks Movement, and Burning Traditions. The wedding that changed everything filled news feeds and inboxes. A clip from the live stream, specifically the moment Celeste lit the gown and the camera panned to Lena's unshaken face, had been viewed nearly 2 million times. Ethan and I sat on the porch of our small vineyard cottage, the early autumn breeze rustling through the grapevines. Our honeymoon had been rescheduled, Our inboxes filled with interview requests, but this quiet moment was ours. I wrapped my hands around a steaming cup of jasmine tea, still absorbing how quickly life had shifted. Not just for us, but for everyone who had been there, watching as our story caught fire and refused to die. A message pinged on my phone. Another stranger, this one a woman from Colorado. She had seen the live stream and wrote, "Asterisk, my fiance's mother treats me the same way." I thought I was alone. "You gave me courage." Asterisk, I scrolled further. Dozens more. From women. From men. From couples fighting for approval. From those who had walked away. From people rebuilding after being told they weren't enough. Ethan glanced over my shoulder, reading one aloud. "You didn't just marry him. You married every girl who was ever told she didn't belong." He smiled gently. "They're right. You didn't just survive it. You stood taller." Before I could respond, Vincent called. His voice sounded clearer than ever. "I thought you'd want to hear it from me directly. Celeste has left the guest house. She's flown to her sister's estate in Carmel. She says she needs time to reflect." "Does she regret it?" I asked quietly. He sighed. "Not yet. But maybe she's starting to feel the consequences. Sometimes silence speaks louder than fire." Ethan took the phone. "Thanks, Dad. For everything." "I should be the one thanking you, son," Vincent replied. "You gave me the strength to finally stop enabling someone who's controlled us for too long." After the call, we sat in silence, the warm hum of cicadas rising in the distance. I thought of all the weddings I had written copy for, the polished stories I had packaged for boutique clients, flawless moments, curated perfection. None of them had ever felt like this. Ethan broke the silence. "Marcus said the agency wants to start a new campaign, Resilient Brides. Real stories. They want you to lead it." I laughed. "Of course they do. Capitalize on catastrophe." "You don't have to say yes," he said. "But you have a voice now. One that people are listening to." Just then, Riley sent a photo to our group chat. It was the easel from the reception, now framed and hung in the agency's front lobby. The sign still read messages of resilience for Ethan and Lena, but new cards had been added from clients, from staff, from total strangers. My heart swelled. Maybe I should say yes. That afternoon, Ethan and I visited the vineyard where we had first met. It was a quiet hillside plot owned by a friend of his father. We had walked those rows of vines on our third date, talking about dreams, about what love should look like when it's real. Not just romantic, but enduring. As we walked through the same rows now, I noticed a vine marked with a small red ribbon. "What's this?" I asked. Ethan smiled. "Your dad once told me that your favorite flower is the fire lily. Vincent had the vineyard team source bulbs, and next season, this row will bloom with them." I stared at the earth below, scorched in places by the summer sun, now preparing to bloom with a flower that only thrives in post-fire soil. It felt symbolic, not just of our wedding, but of everything we had overcome. "You're building me a garden," I said softly. "I'm building us a legacy," he replied. "One that starts with truth and blooms from the ashes." That evening, Vincent sent one final message, a photo of the newly rebranded Wilson Family Foundation logo. The original had featured a wine crest and grapevine. Now, the new emblem depicted a delicate phoenix, wings raised, tail curling like smoke into vine tendrils. Underneath it, the Rising Flame Initiative grants for women rebuilding their lives. Ethan looked at the image and nodded. "It's just the beginning." I believed him, because some fires don't just destroy. Some fires clear the way for growth. It was exactly 3 weeks after the wedding when the silence finally cracked. The message came not as a dramatic phone call or an apology bouquet delivered to the agency, but as a simple, stiff letter slid beneath our cottage door. Ethan found it early that morning, tucked between the crisp pages of the Napa Valley Gazette. The envelope was thick ivory cardstock, with the faint scent of Celeste's signature perfume lingering in its fibers. Her handwriting was precise, slanted, and, unsurprisingly, devoid of warmth. Ethan read it aloud in a slow, even voice. "I did what I thought was right. I acted out of fear. Fear that my son would forget who he was, fear that he would lower his standards, fear that the family name would fade into the ordinary. I see now that fear made me cruel." He stopped, glancing at me for permission to continue. I gave a silent nod. I don't expect forgiveness. Not now. Perhaps not ever. But I ask for understanding. I cannot undo what I did, but I can step away long enough to learn what kind of woman makes a man walk through fire for her. That woman I see now is you. He folded the letter carefully. That's not nothing. No, it's not, I agreed, my voice soft. But it's also not enough. Not yet. Ethan nodded. Agreed. Neither of us responded to the letter. Not out of spite, but because it wasn't time yet. Healing wasn't something you could force, not even with elegant words written on paper that cost $10 a sheet. It had to come with time, with change, with proof. Still, the ripple it left behind was undeniable. That week, the Wilson Foundation officially launched its first round of Rising Flame Initiative grants. Marcus had suggested that we do a short video for the campaign. I agreed on one condition, that it not be scripted. I wanted it to be raw, authentic, just me sitting in the same room where my dress had burned, speaking the truth that had grown from that smoke. The video went viral. I talked about more than the wedding. I talked about boundaries, about how love isn't about pleasing everyone, especially when those people try to control you with tradition or guilt. I spoke about the night I thought I might walk down the aisle alone, and the moment I realized I never truly was. Because resilience, I said, is not built alone. It's built with the people who hold your hand when the world is burning down around you. The comments poured in again. This time, they came with stories. A woman who had canceled her wedding because her fiancé's family refused to acknowledge her heritage. A man who chose to leave a toxic partnership, even when it cost him his reputation. A mother who took her daughter and walked away from a life that was burning her from the inside out. One comment stood out the most. It read, asterisk, you didn't just wear the fire. You made it look like armor, asterisk. Marcus couldn't stop smiling in the office. You've become something bigger than a bride, Lena. You've become a symbol, a face of what happens when women take their power back, even in heels. The campaign lifted off. Local TV stations interviewed us. A national morning show invited Ethan and me to speak on their segment Love Through Adversity. Nadia Tran's boutique exploded with interest. She even renamed the sample gown I wore, the Phoenix Veil. One afternoon, as I sorted through the foundation's grant applications with Vincent and a new coordinator, we came across a name that made us pause. Camilla Davenport. The same Camilla Celeste had once mentioned, her golden candidate for Ethan, polished and pedigreed, raised on country clubs and old money. Her application wasn't for herself, but for her younger sister, recently out of a long-term, abusive relationship. She's applying for help? I asked. Vincent gave a small smile. Sometimes the ones who seem to have it all are fighting the worst silent battles. I approved the grant immediately. When the news reached Camilla, she sent a letter. Hers was shorter, Messier, handwritten on a torn notebook page. Asterisk, I misjudged you, Lena. I'm glad Ethan chose right. And thank you for seeing my sister when no one else did. Asterisk. Forgiveness didn't come wrapped in bows. It came like this, small, quiet acknowledgments, like leaves falling after a storm. That night, Ethan and I sat under the vineyard lights again, the same place where the reception had ended and the fire had finally gone out. Do you regret anything? I asked. He thought for a long time. I regret that it happened, but not that it revealed the truth. Not that it woke up something in all of us. I leaned into him. It's strange, isn't it? How something meant to humiliate me ended up giving me more purpose than I ever had. He pulled me close. You didn't let it burn you. You let it light the path. The vines rustled softly behind us. The stars blinked overhead. And somewhere in the distance, I imagined the last embers of old pain quietly fading into smoke. But this time they didn't sting. They warmed. Early spring arrived in Napa with a softness that felt earned, like the world itself had exhaled after a long season of silence. The vineyard stretched green and alive beyond our cottage, each row a testament to what survived the winter. For the first time since the wedding, everything felt settled. Not perfect, but steady. Quiet in the kind of way that meant growth was happening underground. Ethan spent his mornings managing the new partnership between the Morrow estate and several local female-led vineyards. What began as a business proposal had evolved into something more, a collaborative space where women in winemaking, marketing, and logistics pooled their talents to reshape what a legacy could mean. They called it the Wild Bloom Project. I watched him through the kitchen window one morning, notebook in hand, leaning over a row of vines with two of the women we'd recently awarded foundation grants to. One of them laughed at something he said, her hand flying up to cover her face. Not flirtation, admiration. Respect. He wasn't leading from a pedestal. He was building beside them. Inside, I was writing again. Not just ads. Real words. Essays. Letters. A chapter of a book I hadn't told anyone about. All of it centered on rebuilding after betrayal. About how fire clears the field for something better to grow. One afternoon, a letter arrived. The return address caught my breath. Celeste Moreau. It was the first time we'd heard from her in weeks. The envelope was thinner than before, handwritten again. But this time, the ink wobbled slightly, like her hand had trembled. I waited until Ethan came inside to open it. He sat beside me in silence as I unfolded the page. Lena, I watched your interview last week. I saw the moment your voice cracked and you pressed your hand to your heart. I recognized that moment because I've had it myself many times, alone, hidden, and too proud to admit I was scared. I wanted control. I thought if I could shape the future, I could avoid the chaos of the past. But in doing so, I became the very thing I feared. I hurt you. I shamed my son. And I burned the only bridge I had to the woman he loves. I'm not asking to be welcomed back. I'm only asking to try. To sit at a table again. To listen more than I speak. And to someday maybe earn a seat in your peace. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't nothing. Ethan held the letter for a moment, then folded it slowly. What do you want to do? He asked. I want to think, I said honestly. And I want her to wait. So we waited. We didn't respond. Instead, we poured ourselves into the work that had risen from her ashes. In late April, the Wilson Foundation held its first in-person summit for Rising Flame recipients. Women from across the state gathered beneath a massive vineyard tent, dressed in every color imaginable, no uniforms, no pretense. Just courage dressed in fabric. I gave the keynote speech. When fire comes, we assume it's the end, I said into the mic, but sometimes it's the beginning. Sometimes it's the invitation. The clearing of what was never ours to carry. The burning down of approval we never needed. They stood when I finished. Not clapping out of politeness, but out of recognition. That night, as Ethan and I walked through the garden back to our car, we passed the fire lilies in bloom for the first time. They glowed in deep red and orange, wild and uncontainable, flowers that required destruction to rise. We stopped and stared. You planted these, I said softly. No, Ethan replied. We did. I reached for his hand, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. The air smelled like rain had just missed us, and the wind hummed through the vines. Behind us, the last lantern flickered out. Ahead of us, the path curved into the dark, uncertain and quiet. But we knew where it led, because we had built it. And nothing, no flame, no voice, no fear, could burn it down now. Summer arrived quietly, as if asking permission to step into the space spring had left behind. The vines in the Moreau vineyard had grown thick and tangled, full of promise. The fire lilies, now rooted deep and strong, dotted the property like secret torches that refused to go out. It was the season of harvest preparations, the season of truth taking form. And it was the season Celeste returned to Napa. No announcement, no drama, just a text from Vincent one Thursday morning. She's back. She's asked to speak with you. Only you. No pressure. I stared at the screen for a long time, my fingers motionless on the kitchen counter. Ethan entered the room a moment later, coffee in hand, and saw my face before I said a word. She's here, I said. He nodded, his jaw tightening just slightly. Do you want me to come with you? No, I replied. But I want you close. Just not in the room. An hour later, I found myself seated at one of the outdoor tables near the Vineyard Cafe, shaded by an old oak tree that had stood on the Moreau estate longer than most of the family history itself. Celeste arrived 5 minutes late, dressed in pale blue linen and flats instead of heels. No diamonds, no scarf. Just a woman who looked smaller than I remembered, like she had laid down a crown she had carried too long. She didn't sit right away. She stood across from me, unsure of how to begin. I gestured to the chair. You can sit, or you can stand. Either way, I'm not leaving. She sank into the seat. I thought about what I'd say to you, she began 1,000 times. Practiced it in mirrors, in airport bathrooms, in the guest house where I pretended I was still in control. I said nothing. I didn't need to rescue her from the discomfort. But none of it feels right, she continued. Because the truth is, I don't know how to undo what I did. And I realize now maybe I'm not supposed to. I watched her closely. She kept her eyes low. I was raised to protect the name, she said. To guard the brand, the bloodline, the legacy. My mother drilled it into me. My grandmother embroidered it into pillowcases. But what I did to you, that wasn't protection. That was fear masquerading as tradition. It was jealousy disguised as propriety. You tried to burn me, I said quietly. She looked up. I know. And not just the dress, I added. You tried to scorch the idea of me. Erase me from your son's future. Celeste's throat moved in a hard swallow. Yes, I could feel the heat rise in my chest. Not anger this time, clarity. You didn't just hurt me, I said. You humiliated Ethan. You tried to make his love something to be ashamed of. Tears filled her eyes then. Real ones. I see that now, she whispered. And it haunts me. Every time someone posts your wedding photo, every time a woman writes a message to your foundation, every time I see the Phoenix logo, I know I'm the one who set the match that lit it all. And yet, somehow you made it beautiful. I didn't respond right away. I studied her face instead. For the first time, I didn't see the woman who had nearly destroyed my wedding. I saw the little girl behind her, the one who had been taught that love was something to gatekeep, not something to grow. I don't hate you, I said. Her lips trembled. That might be the most painful thing you could have said. I placed my hands on the table, steady and open. But I also don't trust you. Not yet. She nodded slowly. I didn't come here to ask for your trust. I came here to earn your presence, to sit at the edge of your life and hope you don't push me out completely. A silence settled between us, one not of discomfort but of honesty. I'm not promising you a front row seat, I said, but I won't lock the door either. Celeste let out a breath she'd been holding. That's more than I deserve. We stood at the same time, neither of us reaching for a hug, but there was something unspoken exchanged, an invisible offering. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the fragile first layer of understanding. Later that evening, I told Ethan everything. He didn't press me for details. He just listened. When I finished, he pulled me into his arms, his chin resting on top of my head. You didn't do that for her, he said softly. No, I whispered. I did it for me. That weekend, we hosted a dinner at the vineyard for the women of the foundation's first grant class. The long table was set beneath string lights and surrounded by potted lilies and barrels turned into floral displays. We had invited friends, colleagues, mentors, and Celeste. She arrived with Vincent, quiet and respectful, sitting at the very end of the table. She didn't try to dominate the conversation. She simply listened, observed, and when Chloe toasted to every woman who decided that fire would not be her ending, Celeste didn't look away. She lifted her glass. Not high, but enough. Autumn returned to Napa Valley with the crisp scent of crushed grapes and golden leaves falling across vineyard rows like scattered coins. It had been almost a year since the wedding, the day the flames tried to rewrite our story. And instead of erasing us, they carved out something stronger, something truer. The Phoenix dress now hung in a glass case at the entrance of the Wilson Foundation headquarters. Not the original, of course. What remained of that was only ash, but the recreated sample Nadia had given me, signed by the women who helped me get into it. Underneath, a plaque read, asterisk, some dresses are worn once. Others wear history, asterisk. Ethan and I were asked to speak at the foundation's anniversary gala. This time, there was no nervousness, no stage fright, just gratitude, not only for what we had endured, but for what it had inspired. The ballroom was full of faces who had seen us rise from the chaos. grant recipients, volunteers, friends who had helped sow seams and clear smoke. People clapped when we entered, but it wasn't the applause of ceremony anymore, it was welcome. It was recognition. Vincent took the podium first. He spoke with quiet authority and warmth, honoring not just the women the foundation had supported, but the journey that had transformed his family from the inside out. Legacy, he said, is not the name we protect. It's the truth we tell and the people we lift up along the way. Then he stepped aside and I took the stage. I looked out at the room and saw not just guests, but chapters. Proof that stories, when spoken aloud, could become roadmaps for someone else's healing. I was never supposed to be part of this family, I began, if you ask tradition. If you ask the whispers. If you ask the flames that tried to keep me from walking down that aisle. People leaned forward. But love isn't a seat at a table someone else built. It's the courage to build your own and leave space for others to pull up a chair. That's what Ethan and I have done. That's what you have done. The room exhaled, warm and present. Pain can bury you, I continued, or it can plant you. I chose to root myself in it. And look what grew. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was full. Later that evening, Celeste approached me near the garden doors, her hands loosely clasped, her voice tentative. You were incredible tonight. I gave a small nod. Thank you for coming. I know I still have a long way to go, she said, but I've started therapy, and I'm trying to understand who I became and why. I looked at her, really looked, and I saw it not just regret, but work. The kind of emotional labor people don't always get credit for because it doesn't come with flowers or apology speeches. It comes with presence, with patience. I see the effort, I said, and I'll let you know when it's enough. Her shoulders softened. That's fair. Ethan joined me soon after, slipping his arm around my waist. We stepped out into the cool evening, walking among lantern-lit vines now heavy with harvest. In the distance, laughter rose from the tent. The fire lilies bloomed nearby, red as ever. He looked down at me. You ready for what's next? I already know what's next, I said. It's everything we decide to build. Weeks later, a local magazine ran a feature titled Love That Rose from Fire. It wasn't just about our wedding anymore. It was about a foundation that helped women reclaim their stories, about a family learning to rebuild, about a woman who refused to be erased. And at the very end, the article closed with a quote from me. Asterisk, some people survive the flames. Others learn how to carry them. I became the match, the spark, the torch, and I walked forward, lighting the way. Asterisk, because what fire left behind was not ruin. It was room. Room for truth. Room for strength. Room for love on our own terms.